The morning sun glinted off the dew-soaked petals, turning them into tiny prisms of color. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes knelt carefully in her front yard, trowel in hand, planting bright marigolds along the edge of her walkway. Her knees ached, her back protested, but she welcomed the quiet peace that gardening always brought. This small act, these tiny bursts of life, were her solace after a lifetime of decisions, trials, and courtrooms. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. A sudden rumble of tires shattered the morning calm. Eleanor glanced up to see a patrol car pulling to a stop in front of her house. Officer Davis stepped out, his face tight, eyes narrowed. He approached as if he were storming a battlefield, not a quaint suburban lawn. "Ma'am," he barked, "you're under arrest." Eleanor froze, hands gripping her trowel like a shield. Her mind raced. Arrested? For what? She had lived a life governed by law as a respected judge, and yet now here she was, threatened with cuffs while simply planting flowers. I don't understand," Eleanor said, her voice trembling but controlled. "I'm just gardening." Davis didn't hesitate. "We received a complaint about unauthorized landscaping and property violations. Step away from the plants." The neighbors had begun to peek from behind curtains and porches. Some whispered, some gawked openly. A few ventured into the yard, uncertain whether to intervene. The air was thick with tension, the scent of freshly turned soil mingling with the metallic tang of injustice. Eleanor took a slow, deliberate breath. She felt the weight of every courtroom decision, every precedent she had ever set. Yet never had she imagined being humiliated like this at 73. Fear and indignation coiled inside her chest. She reached into her cardigan pocket, not for a weapon, but for her calm. "Officer," she said softly, "you're mistaken. I am the owner of this property, and I am fully permitted to maintain it as I see fit." Davis's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I need you to comply." Eleanor felt a flicker of defiance. The law was clear. She knew her rights, but the moral tension was stifling. Should she argue, escalate, make a scene, or quietly endure the injustice for the sake of decorum? Her mind weighed each option carefully. Her heart pounded not from physical exertion, but from the knowledge that what happened next would test every ounce of dignity she had preserved throughout her life. She straightened, meeting Davis's gaze with unwavering calm. "Officer, you are about to arrest a retired judge. My life has been devoted to upholding justice, and I will not be humiliated for simply enjoying a morning in my garden." The words carried weight. Neighbors began to murmur among themselves, a low ripple of acknowledgment and curiosity spreading through the crowd. Some raised phones, ready to capture what they anticipated would be an act of injustice. Davis's hand hovered near his belt, hesitation creeping in. He had authority, yes, but Eleanor had presence, experience, and a history that demanded respect. The moral tension was now undeniable. Could a man truly justify arresting a 73-year-old woman for tending to her flowers? The crowd sensed it, their collective gaze holding the officer accountable even as he tried to cling to procedural authority. Eleanor knelt briefly, planting the final marigold. She stood, serene and dignified, as if the soil itself had fortified her resolve. The sun illuminated her silver hair, giving her an almost regal aura. Neighbors began stepping closer, some voicing support. "She lives here. She owns the house." One shouted, another added, "This is ridiculous." The officer swallowed, words failing him. Authority alone was no match for truth, history, and the quiet but undeniable power of integrity. Finally, Davis took a deep breath, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Ma'am, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," he muttered. Eleanor smiled faintly, the calm of a lifetime spent adjudicating and judging permeating her stance. "Indeed there has," she said, "and I suggest we resolve it without further spectacle." The crowd exhaled collectively, cameras were lowered, murmurs quieted, order returned, but the lesson lingered. Age, experience, and integrity had triumphed over impulsive authority. Later, Eleanor sat on her porch, sipping tea and admiring the flowers she had planted with hands that still remembered the weight of gavels and the patience of the bench. A neighbor approached to apologize for the commotion. She waved gently, serene. "My dear," she said, "it wasn't about the flowers, was it?" Eleanor chuckled softly. "No, it never is. It's about respect, and some lessons must be taught gently, or firmly if required." The day ended quietly. Sunlight fell over the yard, the marigolds swaying in the breeze as if nodding to their caretaker. Eleanor had planted more than flowers. She had reminded the world that dignity and authority are not always measured by uniform, but by experience, integrity, and the courage to stand tall. Because here's a truth. that never fades. Justice is not given, it is recognized. Even in a garden, truth blooms where it is nurtured. If this story inspired you, comment where you're watching from, share your thoughts, and subscribe to Cinematic Whispers for more stories that celebrate courage, dignity, and the human spirit.